All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever it is, wherever the hell you are on this beautiful globe or flat plane we exist on, depending on what your thoughts are. Welcome to the Hereticals channel. I'm Chris, also known as the Atheist Pastor. This is Conspiracies. We've got Bobby, Mac, and Jay as usual. We're just waiting on Jen from Jen's Little Corner to jump in. I'm sure she'll be here shortly. And tonight we're going to be having a look at a couple of conspiracy videos that Bobby Mac had actually sent through, and he discussed them in the last the last time we did the moon landing. Is it real or fake? But we thought, well, why don't we watch them? So we'll watch them together. So
some videos to have a bit of context to what was what we discussed.
Exactly.
So yeah.
So that way we can see where you're coming from, understand it, and you never know, you might make non-believers out of us. You know,
I know.
It's strange things that happen.
Make sure everybody's got their tinfoil hats on as well. Okay.
Well, I've got this. I've got this one on. It's not quite tinfoil, but I'm just getting ready for the video to start back up.
I still haven't worked out what position I need to wear it in.
I don't know. Is there like a rule?
I think you just put it on. I think either way it works anyway. It stops the rays getting in.
Fair enough. So how have we been anyway? Obviously we did the thing on Monday night. How have you been the last few days, Bobby?
Yeah, I've been fine. Yeah, I've been quite good apart from my crashing my car, but that was okay. I'm hopefully in the process of getting that fixed up. But hey ho, such is life. You know what I mean?
That happens.
I've been keeping busy, mate. Just doing the same old, pretty much, mate.
Too easy. How about yourself, Jay? How's the week been? All right.
Far more exciting than mine.
Moving on. Jen, how the hell are you?
Hello.
Good,
Jen.
actually. Sorry, I'm a bit late.
That's okay.
You should be, Jen. So you should be. This is a proper show, all right?
Yeah.
You can rock up willy-nilly to the six-pack. That's just a drunken forever.
This is where we discuss the real topics.
To be honest, although
this is yes.
I have record with Jay. I think my latest to a stream was what, an hour and 15
something like that.
That works.
She was like, I was sleeping.
Yeah, so I was asleep and no one could find me because I turned my phone off.
Good trick. Now, for anyone who's new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up if you like it. If it's you, Darth Dawkins, and you're there, give it a thumbs down so we know you're okay. And I guess all the trolls that I've had today that have promised to unsubscribe from me, even though they never subscribed to me to start with, you can hit the thumbs down too, because it's all interactions. So welcome, enjoy the show. So that being said, okay, so the first video we've got 5 videos. I don't know if we'll get through all of them, but
I had only got 3, so
yeah,
you've got a mystery couple.
This is going to be interesting.
Yeah. I don't think it's anything too hard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump in the background because I really won't be contributing a lot to this, but I will be watching. So if at any stage you need me to pause the video because you want to comment on it, just throw your hand up, let me know, and I will pause it and we can comment on it. So I'll keep an eye on the chat, and in fact, I'm going to join the chat.
I do have a question for Jay though. Where's your day release from, Jay?
What?
Where's your day release from? It's the orange T-shirt. I'm sorry.
Oh, it says with great beard comes great responsibility.
Oh no, that's all.
This is very true. Very true.
What happened? What happened to your sovereign citizen video, Jay?
Oh, YouTube removed it.
Yeah, what for?
Hey, what happened?
I think it's because we played that video with the little girl dancing on the bus. So it got removed for inappropriate content.
They won't even let Jay edit that out and put the whole thing back up.
I've got to go in and record it on OBS, re-record it, because I still have access to it for 7 days. So I've got to go in, which I got to do before Saturday, because then it's gone. But I go in and then I'll cut that out, and then I'll that part of it out, and then I'll re-upload it, and hopefully that works. Either that or somebody reported it for being something. But
Was
I'm
it
gonna.
out for
Like
long?
you said,
Was it
I'm
out for
gonna.
long before it got stopped. Before it got before it got stopped.
What was that?
Did it? Was it out? Was it online for long before it got taken down?
Couple days.
Oh right,
days,
okay,
yeah.
okay. So
Yeah. So
No,
I
yeah, as
got
long
I
as
got
it's
102
automatic
views
content.
on it. So
that's all right. That's it.
Yeah. Decent
Apart from
number.
All
one
right,
of those
so
bastards fucking dobbed you in.
maybe.
Bitches get stitches. Remember.
Well, there we go. All right, so the first video that we've got to watch is on the Van Allen's belt. It's a 2.5 minute video. Jen, I'm imagining this is the one you're probably going to interrupt the most because it's a sciencey one that you'll probably be shaking your head at a lot.
It doesn't go
Let the
for very
man
long,
talk,
so I
Jen.
think we might just let it play all the way through. And then
Yes, I was going to say just let it let it
right.
go
yeah,
through.
let it run, and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
All right, so
This is a
that
NASA
being said,
engineer, Kelly Smith.
if we're going to run it all the way through, just want to be very clear. This is for commentary. It is fair use, and let's do it. So I'm going to drop myself out and drop the video in.
Awesome.
Right. So it's got this little video around it as well.
And we have no sound.
Slowly swirls around, it generates a powerful magnetic field surrounding the Earth. These fields cause the formation of two radiation belts around the Earth, called the Van Allen radiation belts.
Have you got the sound now?
yeah, I got to run. I'll be right back. So this one's Jen's video. So I'll be right back.
All right.
They are made of charged particles and are named after James Van Allen, who was in charge of the Geiger counters installed on the Explorer 1 satellite, which discovered the belts in 1958.
We are headed 3,600 miles above Earth, 15 times higher from the planet than the International Space Station. As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
Pause it there if you want, actually.
Do you want to stop that, Bobby?
How long's left?
There's a
Yeah,
few minutes
so
left.
that's no, just a quick point. So that was something that you've obviously got to focus on, that bit there.
The people going through the Van Allen belts. Yeah.
Yes, basically one day
Yeah.
hopefully they'll be able to get through it. Okay, so
Okay. Well, I mean, they can, and they did get through it. There's a couple of things to remember about the Van Allen belts. One, because magnetic fields flow in and out of the Earth, and it's not just a circular path that covers the whole Earth in one.
because there's a
solid
lower and
field around
a
it.
there's a lower and a higher one. So I thought an inner and an outer one. Sorry.
Yeah. And the belt itself is weaker in density than in other locations, so there's less radiation in it. So when the Apollo missions went through the belt, they went through the areas of least radiation to start with. That's the first thing. Secondly, they only spent a few hours within the belt, but to get a lethal dose of radiation within the Van Allen belts, you have to spend several weeks there. So
Yeah.
whilst yes, they did increase their dosage of radiation that they received, it was probably no more. It was no more significant. Not probably. It was no more significant than say having 4 or 5 X-rays in a year.
Long life.
So
it's just that having that engineer, well, they all lived sort of fairly long anyway, so they obviously didn't catch cancer or anything like that from whatever.
Well, it only increases your chance of getting cancer. And I mean,
but yeah, it's just him obviously saying that one day we'll hopefully be able to get through. So
well, that's
and
part
he's
of the reason
he's a NASA engineer, so that's why you hear a NASA engineer
being
say
able
that.
To spend more time there to actually study them.
Hang on,
So
say that
if
again,
you've got
sorry.
people in there studying it, you need better shielding. If you want to do more than just go to the moon, you have to spend more time in the belts. So if you want to say send a spacecraft to Venus or to Mars, they actually spend more time in high Earth orbit before they move on further. So if you want to be able to do that with people, they have to spend longer in the belts, and the longer you spend in the belts, the more exposure to radiation you get, so the more dangerous it is.
What would stop them? What material would they have to use to stop them getting radiation?
Well,
then
most of it's just high speed particles. So a reasonable layer of aluminium would probably stop most of it, and get you down to the right levels. But when you're talking about Apollo, you are talking really thin aluminum on some of that aluminum. Bloody Americans ruining me my language.
what would you what should you be properly using though to stop those particles getting through
From the
the?
Van Allen belt? Well, you're only talking about high speed electrons, basically. So, a couple of mils of aluminium would stop most of it. You'll still
They
get
wouldn't
some
need to
gets
be. It
free.
wouldn't
You'll
need to
also
be
have
lead
cosmic.
lined. They
Oh
wouldn't
no,
need to
no,
be
no,
any
no,
lead
no,
to stop the radiation coming through. Like when
no,
they
because
when you
you're
get an
not dealing
X-ray.
with you're not dealing with alpha particles or gamma particles or anything like that. You're just dealing with high speed electrons. You're dealing with the you're dealing with the charged particles captured by the Earth's magnetic field that come from the sun. And yes, they're moving at a high speed, which is why they're so dangerous. But they can also be stopped by fairly simple means. If you were talking about, say, gamma rays wouldn't be captured by the electromagnetic field of the Earth, but on the other side, they pass through. Now, a super big advantage to us with gamma rays is gamma rays can be stopped by a given amount of mass. So the charged particles in the Van Allen belts plus our atmosphere is enough to stop most gamma rays from reaching the surface of the Earth, which is why we're a lot safer. But astronauts who are in orbit actually encounter more gamma rays, which is one of the things that gives them the flashes in their eyes and things like that. That long-term exposure is more of a problem. So if you're talking about a trip to Mars where you're going to spend 6 to 9 months on the ship, then you've got to consider how much gamma ray how many gamma rays they might actually have to take during it. And the solution for that is to pack food and water around the outer edge of the ship so that you're actually increasing. So you're keeping your stores in the outer edge of the ship, but those stores become the extra barrier that helps stop the gamma rays. I mean, you're not going to stop all of them, but the more you can reduce it, the less risk you're putting people under, because it's a balanced risk over time. So if you can reduce it down so that you're not getting any more radiation from it than you would say from half a dozen x-rays in a year, whilst that's a lot more than most people would want to have, it's significantly less than what it probably would only increase your chances of getting cancer by about 1 or 2%, which over your lifetime isn't a huge percentage increase. And these people know this when they take on these missions. They know this, they take on the risks.
Yeah, they have to. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, but it's no more risky than saying being in the military and going into a war zone. I mean, it's probably far less risky, but space travel of itself is inherently risky anyway. You're going into space, you're going where there's no atmosphere. If there's a hole breach, you will die if you can't fix it in time.
What would happen if what do you think would happen then if you got a hole in a spaceship?
What would happen with a hole in a spaceship? You'd slowly leak atmosphere.
It wouldn't crumple in on itself?
Oh no! It couldn't. Because
of
all your
the
pressure,
difference of
all your
pressure.
pressure in space is inside. Yes, there is, but all the pressure is inside, and you're only talking about filling a ship with slightly more than 1 atmosphere of pressure, compared to the virtual no pressure of space, right? Because you're close to a vacuum. So the escaping of that, it would be actually rather mild. Your biggest problem would be like if you've got a really thin hole like the lunar modules did. It is conceivable that they could tear, but I mean,
well, they did fix the
wasn't a
ISS
huge
once.
issue.
They did fix the ISS once with wire and duct tape. So
Yep, because that's all you need. All you got to do is stop the air from escaping. And the concern there
how would
isn't
the duct tape go with?
explosive decompression.
How would the duct tape go with that sort of environment though?
Oh, perfectly fine. Remember, if you're inside the ship, right, there's no pressure from the outside in. It's not like if you're in a submarine. The pressure is from the inside out because you're pressurizing the inside and there's no pressure on the outside. So if you have a hole and you can find it inside and you put a bit of tape up against it, the actual pressure from the air inside is actually going to help to hold the tape there. So as long as that tape itself is a type of duct tape that is airproof, that'll stop it leaking. Because it'll be held there by the actual internal pressure of the problem is if you have a leak that you can't find, because we only have the oxygen we take with us, and every bit that leaks out is less oxygen that the crew would have to breathe. So in a long mission, if you had a hull breach and you lost, say, half of your atmosphere, half of your oxygen supplies, you may not have enough to get to Mars. And even then you got problems because you're going to need some when you get there, because there isn't, whilst we could effectively send processing plants ahead to extract the oxygen out of the CO2 atmosphere, we could have major issues if we don't have that. So these are things that have to be solved before we send humans back to the moon and back to Mars, because, we haven't been to Mars, but to Mars, because whilst we did these little short jaunts in the 60s, we did them very, very dangerously. Well,
very quickly.
A big example of this is, you talk about the dangers of the Van Allen belt.
How did they time it? That's the thing, though. How did they time it? You said that they went through it very fast. How did they pinpoint when there was going to be
the
a
best
breach
spot to go?
that they were actually going to be able to get
they
through?
used it before they even went into space. They were already mapping what the Van Allen belts looked like with the satellite, with some of the early satellites.
There's a video coming up later on talking about telemetry. So we'll
I mean, we had satellites we sent up there, and we were able to measure what the particles were like in the area. So they had a pretty good idea of what the pattern of it was. They had a reasonably good idea of what the magnetic fields are of the Earth. So if you know how the magnetic fields are looking, you've got a pretty good idea of how the particles are going to be traveling. Because
this is what the video talks about next. Anyway, it talks about the magnetic fields.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the thing with it. I mean, we took enormous risks in the 60s. And I actually did in the video, a debunking video I put out this morning, I talked about why we hadn't gone back. And there are two reasons for that. One is NASA moved into developing the space shuttle. And the space shuttle was only designed for low Earth orbit. It was designed to launch satellites and build the International Space Station. It had a purpose and it was built for that. The money invested in the space shuttle basically crippled NASA from doing moon missions anymore. Plus, there wasn't the need for the moon missions. You could send we put people on the moon, but effectively you could send a little robot in a return mission, pick up some moon rock and bring it back and control it all from Earth, because you've only got a 1 second delay between signals between the moon and Earth, and not risk anyone's life. And that was the whole point. Apollo 13 absolutely terrified the astronauts in the fact that they came so close to losing them. And they still did the extra missions, but there came a point where the US Congress and NASA themselves decided that the risk of sending people that way was more than it was worth when we could do the same things with robotic missions. The problem we have now is that we've got to the point with the robotic missions where it's really, we haven't quite got the AI to the level where we can do all the experimentation we want to do remotely in a decent amount of time. So actually having a person on the ground or a group of scientists on the ground to actually go and look and see what's going on, even on the moon and on Mars, is actually better than sending a robot. We can do the missions, but they take longer, they take more money. So there's pros and cons, and plus we're humans. We like to the adventure, we like to explore, we like to seek out brave new worlds. I do the whole Star Trek thing. So So that's the thing about it. We didn't go back because probably we weren't quite ready to go there in the first place. But
there's another video that explains. There's another video that explains. Buzz Aldrin says why we don't go back as well. That's another video that I think is coming up next.
Yep.
I think.
Yeah.
So we'll play this one. Carry on playing this one.
That's what. Let's go on.
These belts are formed by trapped charged particles. The magnetic field traps these particles that originate from the sun. They then spiral around the lines of the Earth's magnetic field, going back and forth between magnetic poles. Dr. James Van Allen published an article in the March 1959 issue of Scientific American that
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How does the Van Allen belt work with a flat Earth model?
It can't. You need the dynamo inside the Earth creating the magnetic field to create the Van Allen belts. In the flat Earth model, you'd have a sun within the dome, and you wouldn't have the Van Allen belts.
Because there's no pressure. There's no pressure in between the vacuum and the Earth.
Cool.
So I
All
don't
right,
think
we'll keep
there
going.
would be a Van Allen's belt as such.
Yeah, there wouldn't be any if you had a flat Earth.
described the danger in traveling through these belts. The radiation belts obviously present an obstacle to spaceflight. If anyone ever really does go through these belts, it will become apparent just how lethal they really are to humans. Other than the alleged Apollo trips, all other manned spacecraft have stayed below the belts. These belts do not officially begin until an altitude of 1,000 miles is reached. But when one space shuttle crew was brave enough to go nearly 400 miles above the Earth, they started to experience some unusual effects. They reported seeing shooting stars, which were a result of the radiation hitting the retinas of their eyes.
Yep, that
Okay.
happened during the moon missions as well. That can even happen on the space shuttle because you've got cosmic rays that are actually affecting there. If they actually hit the retina, you will actually see those lights on the eyes. The first time the astronauts ever saw them, they were like, "What the hell?" It took them actually a while to figure out what it was.
Now, there's that video is a perfect example of what they call quote mining, because it says that yes, Van Allen said that the prolonged exposure in the belts would be fatal. Yeah, you need to be in the belts for like a week, is what he actually says in.
It was.
Huh?
I think it was about 2 weeks actually.
Yeah, but he actually states in his paper it needs to be at least a week in the belt itself. So just traveling through the belt isn't not going to be lethal.
You got to remember that was in '59. The first. It wasn't. It was nearly a decade later. The first trip through the belts. So by that time, they'd actually studied them a lot more. They had a lot better idea of how intense the radiation was and where the weaker points of the belts were and where they could go through safely and how long it would take them to get through them. So there was a risk, but the risk wasn't as big as you think.
There would be obviously be radiation between the inner and the outer layers. Obviously, there's going to be a radiation field because it's going to start off on a lower scale and then it's going to get higher as it goes up.
You're only talking a few hours for the ship to get through them. So
as opposed to a couple of weeks
or two is a lot less. So the level of exposure that they received was kept to a minimum, and as such, it wasn't considered lethal. Well, it wasn't lethal, obviously, because they're still alive. But so by the time they actually sent them there, they had a pretty good idea of how the belts worked and where the safest places to go and how quickly they'd have to get through them. But when we go back, the plan is to have better shielded spacecraft that are better capable of doing it. And then there is also another issue for modern spacecraft. The Apollo ships were built with diodes and transistors.
Analog.
Older technology, which is a lot more resilient to the electrical fields that are created in the Van Allen belt. So your static discharges that can happen through the electronics was less likely to cause a problem. Modern electronics, modern computer systems are a lot harder to shield. So even if you're worried, even if you're shielding the people fine, you may have issues with the amount of shielding you need to protect the computer equipment, and that is a major problem because it doesn't matter how many spares you've got. If they all blow, everyone on that ship is dead. And building it all out of transistors is not a good plan now. We actually need the extra technologies we've developed to make the missions safer as well. So we have to have this balance of shielding for the electronics and the people inside it so we can put the newer and better technology in place so we can make it safer for the crews. And risking people's lives like they did during the Cold War is not acceptable in the same way now.
So what I'm going to do is, because you've said that, I'm actually going to flick to the third video we were going to watch, because I think that's actually relevant to what you've just said. So I'll throw that up, and this is it's a real long one. It goes for 14 seconds. So I won't be stopping it partway through. So you'll just have to bear with it for the whole time.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again. I'd go to the.
Is that what you were talking about?
Yep.
Oh.
Because I mean, we could build a Saturn V. We know how they were built. We could technically go to all the effort to build a Saturn V again, but would you want to build a Saturn V again? The risks that they took in human life using the Saturn V, we were basically strapped to a bomb with no escape system. If it blew up on their launch pad, everyone was dead. Modern ships like the SpaceX Falcon Heavy and Starship, when it's eventually available, have ejection systems so that if the rocket underneath blows up, they can eject the crew and the crew will live. They're also going to have better computer systems and better navigation systems and better control systems, and as well as ways.
So is that like in response to say something like Challenger? Is that fair enough?
Yeah, onwards. Yeah, all the mishaps they've had in the past has encouraged NASA and the private enterprise to build systems that are safer. We want to minimize the risk of death to astronauts when we send them into space. During the Cold War, we just wanted that. Well, I'm talking about Americans, actually, not us, but the Americans wanted to beat the Soviets.
Yeah, you, Jay.
That was all that mattered. There was a political imperative there that threw caution to the wind on both sides, which is why they did have quite a few deaths, especially on the Soviet sides, more so. Yeah, well, more so on the Soviet side than on the American side, but there were American deaths. There were astronauts who died on the launch pad. There were astronauts who died after being launched in the US, and they're the same for the USSR at the time. There was enormous risks taken. Nowadays, before SpaceX did their launch the other day, they've already launched that same system twice with no crew in it. They made sure it could dock with the ISS without a crew in it, and now they've sent a crew. So there's an awful lot of testing done prior. A lot of on-ground testing, a lot of in-space testing, a lot of money is spent to try and guarantee the safety of the crew. And for that, we also need the better shielding. We need the better technologies that go with that. So yeah, we had the technology. Yeah, definitely. We still know how to build that technology. Most of the current stuff is built off that technology, but it's better, it's safer, it's also cheaper. And they're all important aspects of us getting into space. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's a misquote of what they're actually saying. It's not like we lost the technology. Well, no, we didn't. What we did was we moved to building shuttles, and now the imperative has gone back to putting people into space because we've actually got better technologies. We've got better composite materials now. We've got better tech. We've got better computer systems and navigation systems. We've got a better set of communication networks around the planet with radio telescopes, etc., etc. So we are better able to support manned human missions into space without having to worry so much about getting them killed, because it was an enormous risk. As I was getting to the point before, the whole time any of the NASA crews were on the moon, they ran the risk of being killed by a solar flare. If there was a big enough solar flare, there is no atmosphere on the moon. Well, there's a tenuous atmosphere on the moon, but nothing to write home about. There is virtually no magnetic field. There is nothing to protect them from those particles. So they would have got a lethal dose within about an hour if they'd been hit by a solar flare. They were just fucking lucky. Most of those missions were done at solar minimum, and there wasn't any flares that went in the direction of the moon whilst they were up there. And there was absolutely no way to predict that. That was a complete risk. So any ships that go now have to have enough shielding to protect people against that, and they need habitats on the moon that are good enough to protect the crew when they get there, so they can hide if we detect a solar flare.
Okay.
All right. So Bobby, obviously that's a scientific explanation. Obviously, it's debunking the debunking video. What are your thoughts on that now? Is that something that? Well, I mean, look, obviously from your point of view, the Van Allen belt wouldn't exist anyway. I'm assuming.
Well, as I said, because I'm still going towards that oblate spheroid with the flattened Earth on the inside.
Oh,
We lost
we lost you for a second there.
Space could be a possibility. Having the idea of that oblate spheroid still is that, as I was saying every day about having that as the exosphere, and then still having the possibility of going to space in. The space is still a possibility, but the Earth inside the spheroid itself is completely flat. That's what I'm
you
more
don't
at.
have the molten core, which you wouldn't have with a flat Earth.
What was that? Sorry.
Field. The point is, if you have it, regardless, if you're thinking there's like a dome that's a oblate spheroid around a flat Earth, is basically what you're describing, right?
Yes, yeah. But still, maybe with the possibility of space, because it's still
space beyond that. Yes, I get where you're going, Bobby. But if you've got that flat Earth with no molten inner core, you've got no magnetic field. If you don't have that magnetic field, you don't have those Van Allen belts, so they're not an issue anyway.
Yeah, no, but I'm sort of thinking more along the lines of because it's how it's been interpreted. So we're under that idea of that's how the idea of what it is that works.
So it's not an interpretation though; it's the science.
Yes,
rather than
the science is built around the idea, so to say.
No. It's the science it's like testable. It's the whole point. So if it was a flat Earth, the science would work differently. It wouldn't give the same result.
Yeah, I think you would still get some similar results. Because if you don't know how far it goes down, though.
This is the problem. You could create a model. For example, gravity. We know that accelerating reference frames are, for all intents and purposes, are exactly the same as gravity. That they're functionally equivalent. So you could, in theory, suggest that the Earth was a flat plane constantly accelerating upwards at 9.8 meters per second.
Yeah, I'm not on board with that. I'm not one of those flat earthers.
My point is, you'd have to have that to have the same effect as gravity. Now, of course, accelerating forever at 9.8 meters per second, the Earth would quickly, within a year, would reach the speed of light, which of course is impossible because there's not enough energy to make that happen in the entire universe. So yeah, you've got major flaws with that, but it is a conceivable thing that a few people have suggested that, if we were on a will we tell the difference? Well, there are other things that do tell the difference between that and what we know as the oblate spheroid we live
on. Did you get that information? Did Chris send you that info?
Sorry?
Did you send?
Yeah, I'll send it in the.
No, Chris did. I just haven't had a chance to look through.
That's okay. Yeah, I think because that was something that sort of made me sort of. I was like. That sounds great.
Yeah, I'm quite aware of how frames of reference.
But yeah, I think it's just that the we're getting off topic here. I forgot what I was saying and what I was going to say then.
And I will bring us back to topic because I guess what I was asking is with I guess the point I was trying to get to is with the science explained, are you satisfied with let's take flat Earth out of the equation for a minute. Okay, because obviously the people who are putting the moon video together, if they're talking Van Allen's belt, they're working off a globe. So would you be satisfied, assuming for a second that there was a globe, would you be satisfied with Jen's explanation there? And I know that I'm asking you to assuming something you don't believe, but if there was a globe, would you be satisfied with that?
Yeah, of course I would be, because that's how the normal basis of it is. So that's what everybody has the understanding of. But I don't have that understanding. I think a little bit left field, and I look at it from a different perspective and a different point of view. Even though
but obviously with this video though, this video is debunking the moon landing based off the globe model.
Yes, of course it is. Yes, that's what it's working off of.
So essentially, yes, what I'm saying is with Jen's explanation, that debunks the debunk video.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah,
because they're working off a different model to you anyway.
Yeah. That's why I can't really 100% agree with it, unfortunately.
Yeah, you have to base it from their model. So their point of contention about the Van Allen belts and about our technology is invalid, given the model that they're basing that stuff on is the same model as we have about the Earth.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So what I'll do is I'm going to move to the next video. It's the Buzz Aldrin video. I haven't seen this, but I have an idea what it's about. I'll throw that up and we can have a look and see. Now this one goes for about 2 minutes. If at any point you want it stopped, just let me know. I'll stay in the stream for this one.
This
but
is really Jay's one. This is a problem.
I know it is
really Jay's one, and maybe you should do one of the other ones and come circle
I
back.
think. Let me have a quick look. So we've got the erased moon landing tapes, and NASA admits we never went to the moon. So I think they're kind of all Jay's ones. So we may need to Jay's for those who are watching. Jay's just got a couple of things going on in the background.
One advantage of the Buzz Aldrin one is I know he's already seen it. So if he comes back at the end of it, he can jump in and he knows he's back.
Hey,
there you go. We wasted enough.
I was going to say, speak of the devil and he shall appear, but I mean we're talking about the holy Jesus. So speak of Jesus and he shall cometh.
Yeah.
Don't want Jesus
all right.
to come. Never get him unstuck.
Well, look, even Jesus needs to cometh every now and then.
And there's your once per list.
All right, there we go.
He saureth, he forgotteth.
It's more than once per list. No, thank God it's not Friday. Hey, all right. So here's Buzz Aldrin.
Oh, this one.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened. And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it didn't happen. So in the future, if we want to keep doing something, we need to know why something stopped in the past that we wanted to keep it going.
Can we pause that? Because
that's clearly he misspoke in one bit. That's like a.
You've got to, if you listen to
yeah.
the question. She asks, "What we went to the moon? Why haven't we gone again?" And he actually does answer that question. It doesn't
because we
dictate
never
it
went
really well, but he does.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't say that because even there he's saying, keep going. He's talking about as if.
No, he says we never went to the moon.
That's not what he said.
No, it's not what he says.
Go back.
I'll take it back. I'll take it back.
Because she asked, "Why haven't we gone back in such a long time?"
Nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question.
Okay, so clearly there he's saying, I want to know as well why we haven't been back.
We haven't been back for a long
because he's someone who has been pushing for to go back to the moon. He's been fairly active in promoting and pushing the space program.
Mm-hmm.
So cool.
I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened. And
because we didn't go there in this way, because they didn't go there. Why didn't we go back? Because we just didn't go there.
Which is exactly what he
because
means.
We didn't go there.
Answering the actual question that was asked. We didn't go there. And that's the way
we didn't go there. I think he didn't want to lie to. He felt bad about lying to a little girl.
No, that's
because we didn't go there. What else interpretation would that take?
Okay, well, hang on, but listen to what he says after.
And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it didn't happen. So
Still talking about going back, I reckon. But
in the future, if we want to keep doing something, we need to know why.
if we want to keep doing something,
Yeah, keep trying.
Know why?
Keep trying to get up.
Something stopped in the past that we wanted to keep it
We need
going.
to know why something stopped, which is him saying we did go, but we stopped, and I want to know why we stopped.
See, we're all obviously. I'm getting a completely different interpretation of that.
I think you're seeing what you want to see there, though.
No, but I don't think a lot of other people see it as well, though.
Yeah, a lot of other people who want to see that other answer, but it's actually the answer he gave was the one for the question she asked. Why
I was waiting because I haven't seen this yet. And I was waiting for a big gotcha, but that ain't it.
He starts talking about money and stuff like that, like why how much
money was a big issue.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Oh yeah,
but
yeah.
When he says we didn't go there, you're obviously presuming that we didn't go there, as in we didn't go to the moon.
The reality was the funding NASA had, and the limited funding NASA still has, NASA could not afford to do the International Space Station and do moon missions. And it was chosen that low Earth orbit, they could do all the studies that they needed to do about living in space and getting better technologies for that. From the International Space Station without risking people going to the moon. So the shuttle was invested in to experiment with reusable technologies. And we went with the whole thing of building the space station. And yes, it slowed us down for nearly 50 years on our space development. But a lot of that is all to do with money. If you threw enough money at NASA, like they did when they were trying to beat the Soviets, NASA could have done it. Here we could have done Mars. We could have done everything else already. And we probably could have had a reasonably decent ships, but we also would have lost lives because our technology wasn't quite good enough.
And I mean, if communism hadn't and the Soviet Union hadn't have collapsed in 89 to 91, then it could be a different story. And I mean, if China turned around tomorrow and said they were going to get a manned mission to Mars, you watch how quickly America's space program all of a sudden kicks back up.
Well,
America's going to be number one.
What would happen is the government in the US would kick tons of money at SpaceX because they're partway to that development already. So they'd do it through the private sector, but it'd be government funded.
Yeah, quite possibly, yeah. Is there anything after this that we need to watch, or is that kind of it?
That's pretty much it. He just kind of goes in now and trying to explain to this little 8-year-old girl about the reasons why, with the money funding and stuff like that. I mean, the big part of this video we've already seen.
Yeah.
And Godless Granny said also that the subtitle is inaccurate. It changes the meaning of what he says in that subtitle. Because if you go back to what he says, why didn't we go back? And the subtitle goes, why didn't we go back to the moon? Or something to that effect. I don't remember exactly what it said.
He doesn't actually say the moon because she says, why haven't we moved back to the moon in such a long time? Because we never went there.
And whereas sometimes because we
so
didn't
he's
go
obviously
to the moon,
talking about
not
the moon.
what he said.
They're just adding that.
Yeah, I don't think that's. Yeah, I agree with Bobby. That's someone just putting in. Like if I were to.
But see, that's the problem though. That's the problem though. A lot of conspiracy theorists, not saying you, Bobby, and I'm not saying this, but a lot of them that you see, they'll take what the subtitles there say, and not take what he actually said. So they'll go, he's saying we didn't go to the moon. That's not what he said, though. He's saying we didn't go back.
He's saying it without saying it.
See,
that's interpretation.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I know that's what I mean, but it just seems to be to me. It seems like he doesn't, and then he sort of gets his train of thought back, and he's like carries on.
He has come out since and clarified that we have definitely been to the moon, and that people misinterpreted him on this. Then I would say our interpretation of what he meant is right.
I think Raven actually put it good. She put a quote in here saying he's oversimplifying it for an 8-year-old and having trouble figuring out how to say it so she understands.
I don't.
Which is what he's obviously said afterwards as well.
Aye, but then he starts talking about money and finance and stuff like that. So he doesn't. like an 8-year-old's not going to understand about money and budgets and stuff like that. So
He
it's
didn't
not really
talk
a
about
case
the
of.
budgets. He just said it all.
No. Later on, like and later on in this video, he still talks to her, the same little girl, about money.
Well,
So,
what I might do is
detail.
let's so we're on the same level playing field. It was at 45 seconds before. I'll play it for a little bit longer because I don't think we're going to get to the long video anyway because we've only got 15 minutes and that one's 9 minutes and that'll probably take us an hour to get through at this rate.
There's a couple of good sections of that one, but I can't remember exactly.
Well, that's all right. I mean, we can go back. We can go back and particularly watch that one on its own at some point. So we can dedicate a whole thing to that. But look, let's listen to the rest of this.
Money is a good thing. If you want to buy new things, new rockets, instead of keep doing the same thing over, then it's going to cost more money. And other things need more money too. So having achieved what the president wanted us to do, and then what thousands, millions of people in America and millions of people around the world. You know, when we toured around the world after we came back, the most fascinating observation was signs that said, we did it. Not just us, not just America, but we, the world, different countries. They felt like they were part of what we were able to do. And that
that's oversimplifying it for an 8-year-old.
That's pretty oversimplified. But then he just says, they're all part of what we were able to do.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So, that's what I mean. He seemed to be honest at the start, and then you sort of see him catch him. It's a bit sort of like, and then
look. There's some where I can kind of understand. I think on this one you're clutching at straws.
See, I honestly don't. It honestly seems like it's a fair question. She's asking him, regardless of the subtitles, regardless if they said we never went to the moon. She's asking why we haven't been to the moon in such a long time, and he says because we never went. He doesn't have to say we went to the moon because, regardless, what are you presuming? He means the moon. So that's what
said we never went. I'd agree with you, Bobby, but she'd asked why hadn't we gone back. So he was answering that question, not the one that you want him to have been answering.
But he says because we never went. Because we never went there.
As in we never went back.
But we never went there though, not never went back. We never
went there. I think with this one, I think we've got a clear we're not going to get an agreement because it's down to interpretation. So I think we might let's move on from this because otherwise we're just going to be yes it is, no it isn't, yes it is, no it isn't for the next 12 minutes. And
so I do have a question.
Not me.
I have a question for you, Bobby. You're not a religious type, right?
No,
not at all. Not a little bit whatsoever.
No. I've got I was atheist for ages, and then I sort of become a little bit agnostic, but not really. Only in the simple fact that I don't think we're here. I think we were created by something. I think we're like an experiment.
Okay, so here's like the biggest thing is the flat Earth is based on religion.
Yeah, I know.
So if you're not religious and you're not believing what these books or these religious texts are telling you, why do you have such a big thing with the Earth being flat?
Because that's what I honestly believe. Because I don't even look at the religious aspect of it. I don't even look at that part. I haven't even read any of it. I've only seen certain quotes and stuff like that, but I haven't actually dived into it because I don't believe in the Bible. So to me, it's just going to be another story that I'm reading.
But see,
I think just to quickly clarify, because I actually went down this path the other night with Bobby J. if I'm explaining this wrong, please correct me, Bobby. But you do believe that there is a creator that created everything, but you're just not sure exactly who or what that creator is, because I don't know if you necessarily it's a young Earth model, but you had some questions about evolution.
No, I'm not a young Earth creationist. Like I don't understand it all. I just take on board what I read, what I see, what I embrace and try to take on board and try to sort of teach myself. And it seems to have worked. You know what I mean? So, and I think it has changed my point of view to a certain degree. So,
well,
so you're curious, yeah.
What was that?
Sorry, I'll throw to Jay.
Oh, here's the issue then. Since you're not a religious person and you're following down the flat Earth footsteps, all these people that are coming with all these proofs of flat Earth or trying to show you this or trying to debunk that, they are all coming from their religious point of view. Everything they're coming from has to meet what their book says, that the Earth is flat, there is a dome.
Yeah, of course they're going to follow
So
that narrative to a certain degree.
Yeah, and that's the problem. They're not building on what they see, they're building on what they're trying to get to. So therefore, they're not looking at the facts as they are presented to them in truth. They're trying to twist and manipulate it to fit the narrative of their holy book. And that's the problem with a lot of these conspiracies, especially flat Earth, is the flat earthers aren't looking at it in the true sense of the scientific way you're supposed to look at something. They're looking at it with the conclusion first and then changing and manipulating and rewording things to fit it so they can get back to that conclusion. Because everything in science states the Earth is not flat. It's only in the flat Earth field in all these flat Earth conspiracy theorists that the Earth is flat. That is it. And every one of those has a religious content, I don't remember exactly the word. Connotation, yeah. So they've got a conclusion and they're twisting the facts to fit their conclusion, not using the facts to come to a conclusion.
But I don't think, I think there's probably flat earthers out there that aren't religious. I don't think every single one of them is religious. And there's probably some that aren't religious that put content out there that aren't seeing it from the religious point of view. They're seeing it from how I feel like I've sort of seen it.
Yeah. I'm see if I can word this right. What you're seeing and what you're researching is all coming from that religious conclusion. If you were actually going to go in and look at the scientific data, none of it points to a flat Earth. None whatsoever. It's only the flat Earth researchers that come to this conclusion that the Earth is flat.
Well, that's what's in that document that I sent to Jen. That seems to have a very good description of the flattening of the Earth. So that's why I want to have a that definitely has to have a look over.
That's probably something to look through for maybe for next week.
Oh yeah, it would take a little while. It would take a little while for Jen to have a look at it. You know what I mean? So there's a fair bit of, I don't know, maybe it might be something.
Jen's a pretty smart cookie.
No, I'm not.
She reads good.
It looks like
just not on Friday nights.
No, I
Although I reckon I could still run rings around some of the people on the internet, even when I'm drunk.
I reckon you could run rings around me when on a Friday night. To be honest, it's like I said. Every time I hear you talk science, I get a bit smarter, but feel a bit dumber.
But yeah, right, so I don't understand I don't see it from a religious point of view, even though the narrative might be there and that's how it's been put out. I honestly don't. I don't see it as coming from like a biblical style. Yes, there is some stuff that come from it, but that's you tend to get that from a lot of stuff. Because I don't really understand the Bible or anything like that. I'm not a religious knowledge wise.
I will say that there is a lot of science that has come from the Christian belief. I mean, there are a lot of because there are a lot of very famous Christian scientists that have
the Big Bang was founded
advanced our scientific knowledge on the Earth and everything else.
So, although that being said, there was also a period of time where you just, even if you weren't a believer, you had to basically say you were a believer.
Yeah.
In order to function in society.
But then you've got those missing 300 years that happened. You know what I mean? So what the fuck's that about?
Oh, please, Bobby, please don't tell me you believe in that one.
I'm joking.
Missing 300 years. This is a new one.
Have you not heard about this with Charlemagne?
The Dark Ages. Charlemagne actually never existed. The Catholic Pope at the time advanced, because it was during the Dark Ages when everything was being burned, and the only people that could read and write were those through the church. So to kind of wipe away the stigma of Charlemagne and whatnot, they actually advanced our time frame. So we're actually in the 1700s, not the 2000s.
Oh,
the problem with that. The problem with that theory, the problem with that theory is that theory will only work in the Catholic Church, because if you go to, say, the Mayan calendars or the Chinese calendars, or the African calendars, none of them.
Technically, really, at the end of the day, there shouldn't be really any date on anything, because you can't really, when was that first started? We just go off the Gregorian calendar.
Yeah, well, that's the traditional one that's used. Although, mind you, in different parts of the world, the Chinese will refer to things in the Chinese year. Same with the Jewish people. Muslims as well. They call it, I think, 1400 and something, because they count it from I think the ascension of Muhammad.
If I remember right. Yeah,
that just goes off. You don't know when everything was written down or when everything was started. It's just like where that basic idea of somebody went, right, this is day number one.
Yeah. Well, that's basically what they did.
We know when they started that. We know when they did that. But
they basically went, okay.
Started in? When do you reckon day one was?
What, of the actual Earth? It was about 4.5 billion.
Of like when, like, that's what I mean. It's hard to. You don't know with a time frame of stuff. Like given a calendar, regardless of a calendar, like time frame, that is just something that was just made up and just put into place. I think everybody just went along with it.
No, I think the Gregorian calendar was that. I'm pretty sure that was Constantine, wasn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
that's the one that we use at the moment.
Yeah, and because that's when the Roman Empire converted from paganism to Christianity. But even in the I think in the early 20th century, the Orthodox churches actually had to adjust their calendars forward by a few days. There was like a few day difference between the Western and the Eastern European calendars for some reason. So the Orthodox observe things different. That's why I think they've got different Easters and different Christmases. But
I mean, everybody's got different time frames and stuff. So,
well, I mean, look, it's a construct.
Real one.
Well, none of them. They're all a construct. Yeah, I mean, look, this could be. We could say, all right, we're going to count.
We have absolutely no idea what the year is.
The year one from when the atomic bomb was dropped, saying that was the dawning of a new age. But really, it doesn't matter because it's a construct. It's a number. I mean, we can call it. This is the second year
end of a specific date, and we're just like, yeah, we're fine. We're past that specific. 2012 was years ago. Don't worry about it. And then,
well, I always said that the Mayans couldn't predict their own demise, so I don't know how they were going to predict something.
Yes. What do you think happened with the Mayans? Where did they go? Do you think it was a virus? Do you think it was a flood? Do you think it was
probably warring?
There was a lot of them, but I don't think they found like heaps of bodies, so they just vanished.
No, they didn't. No, there's burials, so they know where they are.
Not all of them. There was thousands
they
of them.
were. They were a group of people. Nations, it's just like nations happen now, or has happened throughout history. It's see, people look at I guess the non-European world and assume that it was just all these native tribes with people who had no idea. The South Americans in particular were heavily advanced. They had an earlier form of agriculture and a slightly different form of agriculture than what, say, the Europeans had. They weren't as far along technologically as far as boats and things like that. But what you've got to remember is there isn't a lot that separates the American, the Native Americans from the rest of the world. I mean, they went into they crossed the Bering Strait when it was covered only 10,000 years ago. So we're not talking that they've been there for tens of thousands. They've quite literally been there for 10,000 years, and they came from the rest of society that was advancing at a certain rate. So they didn't quite get there as quickly. That's not to say they wouldn't. It's but you look at the different native or the indigenous peoples around the world, and you can see that there's different styles. I mean, the Australian Aboriginals are a classic example. They had agriculture. They had fairly advanced agriculture. They had nations. They went to war with each other. They battled over. As different concepts, but it's and things like that also happened in America. So the Mayans were probably just wiped out by the neighboring nations. It's the same as why there's a lot of nations that no longer exist. It's why a lot of people no longer exist, or it's why we're of Anglo-Saxon or Celtic descent. Okay, at one point there was the Anglos, so you wouldn't say the Anglos disappeared, even though there's not really any pure Anglos now because we've got the Anglo-Saxons. You had the Viking invasions. It's sort of it mixed everything around. So if you were to look at ancient England, for instance, you wouldn't say, well, what happened to the Venus worshippers in ancient England? That had this very succinct traditions and culture. They didn't just disappear. It's just that invading forces came in and religions changed and thoughts changed and
they integrated with other tribes. Yeah.
In fact, and here's something that's interesting. So, we're talking about 10,000 years ago was when the American Indians crossed the Bering Strait. 6,000 years ago, the native English people that I descended from, I'd imagine probably everyone in this panel descended from, were black. And it was only through climate plus dietary conditions with the advent of farming and agriculture that the skin tone changed. So it's it's people who we're descendant from were very different to who we are or how we look. You wouldn't think we were related, and it's a similar thing that would have happened in the Americas, in Australia, in Asia, throughout the world. Probably the only place that it hasn't, and probably if you were to look at the one pure human people, is probably the Africans.
Well, if you're talking about 10,000 years ago, I mean, you've got to go like 12,000 years ago. Have you heard of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey?
Yep,
that's 12,000 years old, and that was built. So it was obviously a culture there that built and was able to do.
Absolutely,
things.
It was, yeah, and that was that was primarily a trading post. So that was like a people from a lot of different surrounding cities would come into there, and it was like a central trading city. So, but what you've got to remember is and there is, keeping in mind that the distances, even though it's 100 miles back then, was a lot further than 100 miles would be now because of transport and how we can, most people wouldn't have left a 20-mile radius of where they lived, but realistically, we're talking about 2,000 years after that, people in the northern part of Asia crossed the Bering Strait, walked across it.
So who was that? Who do you reckon would have been in Göbekli Tepe? Because if that's
Turks.
the oldest found site.
Turks, yeah.
When we say
all the descendants of the modern Turks, yeah.
When
Sorry?
we say they walked across it, it wasn't a little day trip into a new continent. They did it.
Oh, no, no,
yeah, I know that.
They did it
exactly.
over hundreds of years, over several generations.
Yeah.
They slowly walked
Yes,
across.
yes. Yeah, it was, yeah, because it wasn't, well,
It wasn't a Sunday
It wasn't
afternoon
an
jaunt.
ocean. No,
There's so much
oh,
history
hang
that
on,
we
let's
don't
go.
know. There's so much to history that we don't know, that we
Absolutely there
think
is.
we know, we
There's
think we
so much.
understand, but there's so much of it that we.
Well, there's so much we
don't.
know we don't understand, but we learn a lot, and we can. It's all in the way we interpret things, and so things like that. Yeah,
Exactly. That's how I interpreted that Buzz Aldrin thing. You see, it's all about interpretation.
Yes, but it's also.
See? No. You need to put a
Oh,
banner up. Bobby Mack was right. Bobby Mack was right. I
clarifications.
think you need to put Chris says Bobby Mack was right. I think you have to put that banner.
No, Chris said Bobby Mack's
Bobby,
smart ass, but that's okay.
The difference is that Buzz Aldrin is still alive, and he clarified what he meant.
No, I know. We're talking about interpretation.
He's being a cheeky Scot.
Being
I
a
was about to
smart
say,
ass.
being a cheeky little devil.
I'm being a smart
Yeah,
ass.
that's
Don't
all right.
worry
We
about
love
me.
you,
I'm
Bobby.
being a smart ass.
But yeah, so anyway, yeah. Look, so the history and the archaeology side of things. Yeah, okay. Now you're in my realm. So Jen can be the smart one on science. Yeah, I can cover all this. Even the other day when we were talking about evolution and the species variation, I can even jump into that because that's
and you did
archaeology. But that's for another stream. But
I only have in all honesty, I only have basic information about a lot of different stuff. So, but I have some stuff I know a little bit more about than others. But I like learning about stuff and talking about stuff. And
you're a jack of all trades, a master of none, as we say.
That is it. That is it, mate. You know what I mean? So that is it.
A jack of all trades.
Something like that. Yeah.
A bomb of all trades.
Yes, Jen. That's right.
No, don't get started.
It's
not Friday.
Well, look, that being said, we have just gone over the hour mark, and I know we like to try and keep these ones to an hour. So,
if you want to know, Sergeant, if you do want to know what we're talking about, go back and watch the Friday Night Six Pack from Friday, and you'll understand.
It's probably best no one ever sees that again. I think that
Actually, don't go and watch Dave's stream afterwards.
It's just a video. It's out there. You've done worse. You've probably said worse. Who gives a fuck?
I've got no doubt. I've got no doubt. I've done and said I was fine.
You know what I mean? So I'm not embarrassed or ashamed about anything. Chris knows me. I have no shame. So
God has spoken. He said, "Good show, guys. Got to get some stuff done. Don't gang up on BMAC too much." Like the BMAC.
Thanks. I see the BMAC.
And we good to see you there, grumpy old dude. All right, so if you guys want to anything coming up in the next few days, we all want to talk about, or Jen, what's happening in your little corner?
Well, aside from the stream that I had today and the lovely debunking video that I put out earlier today, which I believe that you and Bobby are going to watch through.
I was going to say, Bobby, we're going to watch Jen's debunking video together.
What's that about?
Flat Earth.
Is it good? Is it good? I don't want to watch it if it's shit.
Jen put it together, so we know it's really sensational.
Production-wise,
I did get upset with them in the middle.
Production-wise, it will be good.
That's beside the point.
Yeah, we know it's going to be good. We know it's going to be good. So we'll watch that. Anything else popping up, Jen?
I'm taking the piss again.
Australians.
I'm taking the piss. It's that sarcastic humour. That was where, to be honest, that was where the Australians got their humour was from the British, was from
definitely, yeah. We've got a very
from us. So we know about sarcasm and taking the piss, and
we especially got a lot of our attitudes from the Scots.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for the day that Bobby Mack turns around and says, this whole flat Earth thing, the whole time I've been taking the piss and you fell for it. I'm waiting for that.
You're still waiting for it? Yeah, I am too.
I did think that initially, but if you got me, if that was the case, well, you've got me good now because now I genuinely believe you believe.
Raven says she said 5 minutes. It's 23 minutes.
My video wasn't 5 minutes. It was the video I was debunking, which actually they said it was 5 minutes.
But that's 5 minutes. I'm not being sexist, but that's 5 minutes in women time.
Oh,
23 minutes.
That's how Bobby
makes
count.
he like to talk. And tomorrow for us, but this evening for those in the US, myself, Hissy, and Lissy are doing our first Harry Potter stream.
Oh yes,
And
that's
I
right.
can't remember what time it is.
You're a wizard, Harry.
It's 9:15 a.m. Australian time, so that will be 7 something Eastern, 7:15 Eastern time in the US. Cool.
We'll take you one
Easy.
for it. Time.
I'm getting good at these American time zones now. I feel like I'm exclusively in them.
So that's going to be on your channel, Chris?
No,
No.
it's not mine.
No, there will be no Harry Potter on my channel. They wanted to do it on that, and Lissy thought she could hijack the channel. No.
I hear her giggling in the background.
She always giggles in the background.
Hello.
It's she loves it. It's all right. What have you got coming up, Jay?
Well, I have 5:30 Eastern time. Yeah, 5:30 Eastern time Saturday. I'll actually be on Godless Granny's channel. She's got a stream going on. Cool. And then 9:30 that night, I'll be talking with Jeff from Steam and Cup of Reason.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got a couple ideas for some videos. Hopefully, maybe getting out next week. Other than that, I do want to give a good shout out to a channel friend, Mr. Ross Burns from the Burns Eye View. Just had his baby. So congratulations to him.
Now Bobby will be.
That's all I got.
Bobby will be seen back here next Wednesday, if not before. We'll probably get you on something in the meantime. It's you're always fun. We'll work it out. So Friday night six pack this week. Friday night six pack's going to be a reasonably important one. We're going to be talking about obviously there's a lot of stuff going on in the world at the moment, and we wanted to bring light to the Australian side of things. So we're not talking about what's going on in America, but we are going to talk about the Indigenous population, I guess the history and what's going on at the moment with the Indigenous population in Australia, because there's an important message that's going to get out there. We're also going to be talking about the monarchy, and once again tying in the history. Reason we're doing that is because it's the Queen's birthday long weekend, so we thought it was probably a good time to bring that up with everything going on in the world. Explore the history, explore the I guess the far back history. So it's how Indigenous people got here, what happened 230 years ago, and then sort of talk about what's going on now as well. So we've got that. Tomorrow I'm doing something that's completely not getting me any abusive messages on Twitter. I'm actually doing a new show. It's not going to be on my channel. I'm doing it with Steve McRae. It's a politics show. Everyone thinks that I'm going to go on and be a nodding my head with Steve. It's actually a show where it's politics, and we have completely opposing political views. So we're going to probably spend more time. Oh, look, there's a lot we'll agree on, I think, but I think there's a lot we'll argue on as well. But that should be a bit of fun. So over and under, we're going to see how it goes. If we do something regular with it, I don't know. It just, I guess it depends if I've got the time, if he's got the time. But we're talking about Antifa and looking at some of the stuff that's going on in the States tomorrow. So I won't be doubling up for 2 nights of the US, but that's going to be, I think it's 8 p.m. Pacific time, which is 1 o'clock for me, which would be 11 p.m. Eastern time. So that'll be over on Steve McRae's channel. So there we go. So that will be fun. All right. Hang on. Well, I can fix that.
Blue. You can't be trusted with a wrench. I don't get that.
Bobby, okay, so what it is, so if you've got a wrench, that means you're a moderator. You can delete comments, you can do all that kind of stuff, kick people off.
I don't want the fucking responsibility of that. I've got to take it off you. I've got to try and just I can't handle too many things at once, so I've just got to try and focus this conversation, and like I have to write notes down because
I'll remove you as a moderator.
So I'm writing things down. So 2 points quickly before we go, while you're talking about the monarchy, because it's the Queen's birthday. Recently, the royal seal has been taken off. Or actually, 6 months ago, the royal seal got taken off the Buckingham Palace due to it being broken by a delivery van. Now, it sort of rings a little bell in two ways because one, I don't think it would take 6 months to get fixed, and two, I don't think delivery trucks go through the front door. I think they go through a little side gate, and it looked like all the windows were boarded up from the inside of Buckingham Palace. Now, there's a guy come out called King John III, or Joseph Gregory Hallett. He's an Aussie who's claiming title to the throne. It's a very weird story if you look into it.
Oh yeah, with the I think one of the descendants was illegitimate, or they claim was illegitimate.
Anne
so
Boleyn, it was he's a descendant of Anne Boleyn, who was supposedly executed, but she was actually whisked away, and she'd had these children. And he's a descendant of her. Who's the rightful?
So he's King Ralph.
No, King John III. He is.
Yeah, I think there's a few that I know that there was one where there was a question of legitimacy. They thought that
there was another Australian as well, actually, wasn't there?
Yeah, because they actually, I think it was Tony, whatever he is, English guy, did the research, traced the family tree, and found it was a bloke who technically still had a lordship, but just lived in out the back of nowhere in New South Wales, and
But who knows? So, who really knows? Like, I don't know. This guy seems to have some quite valid documentation. So,
if he's got documentation of Anne Boleyn being whisked away, I would love to see that, because
no, honest to God, I don't know.
There's a lot of documentation that says that her head was removed.
I'm just saying it's a very interesting story to look into.
Yeah,
Joseph Gregory Hallett. It's fucking mind.
I'll happily look at that guy, and maybe that can be a conspiracy I do with you at some point. That could be fun.
Oh yeah, that might be all right.
Yeah. History I can do.
History is good.
History's good. All right. Well, on that note, we'll end the stream there. So thank you to everyone who has been there watching. It's been a fun one as always. We'll do it again next week. Yeah. Thanks everyone in the chat. Thanks to all of you for showing up. Thanks for Jen for making me feel dumb. I'm just glad I got to hit you back with a bit of history. So
thanks for Jen.
Chris, you make me feel really dumb when you go down history. So.
Oh, good. Well, that makes me feel a bit better.
I don't make anybody feel dumb, so it's all right.
I don't know. You have done a few times.
I was going to say, you're Jesus. You are wise. You know everything. You were here at creation, so who are we mere mortals?
I know you were
actually
6,000 years ago.
And if it turns out that Bobby's right about all this, people in the future are going to watch it back and go, "Yeah, Bobby was a smart one." These three people are just nothing.
Well, you know how the paintings.
Admitted he was right twice.
you know how all the paintings of Jesus on the cross always got the three, Jesus and the two guys. Well, Jesus was actually the fourth guy. He was off to the side, just
Makes
out of
sense.
the painting. So
he was next to Brian.
yeah.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you. Have a good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are on this wonderful planet we all occupy. I will talk to you all again